This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
And away we go for another week of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you. Believe it or not, it's now been over a month. Yes, over a month since the Leafs have lost a game in regulation back to the Hall of Fame game on November 11th. How are we feeling on this Monday, Rosie?
No complaints here, buddy, in beautiful Banff, Alberta, and just sitting in the mountains, enjoying the wins that this team has been racking up. It's been a good weekend, man. How about you?
Do they even have cable out in the mountains?
Oh my God, buddy. You need to get out from the east over there in the smog and let your lungs breathe a little bit of actual air for a minute. Jesus.
East Coast bias for sure. So a 14-game point streak here for the Maple Leafs, 22 in a row for Mitch Marner. No doubt we'll address that as we move forward in this 3-game week for the Maple Leafs. Remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review wherever you're checking us out. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest happening here on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Thoughts, comments, concerns, or questions, drop us a line in the chat down below here on YouTube, and we'll get to it later on. Now, before we get going, did you ever know continuation was a thing in the NHL until Saturday, Rosie?
As far as what continuation? Some weird new stat that I don't know about or care about?
No, the Hannafin goal. Like, we texted about this last night. You wanted to talk about it.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't even know what they called it, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even understand what they were talking. I was like, guarantee that's not a goal. My wife and kids were just watching. They're like, oh no, the whistle went. I'm like, yeah, good thing though. Blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, that's a good goal. And I'm just yelling like I just don't know what to expect anymore. There's been quite a few of these goals that I don't know if it's goalie interference or not. There's quite a few gray areas, and it's almost like they're introducing new ones where everyone who's been watching hockey their whole life is like, oh, well, that's obviously under this rule or that rule. And all of a sudden the refs are like, yeah, there's this thinger going on that we're going to call today. And I'm just like baffled. But I don't know. You got to think those guys know more than we do at home. But I just don't. I just always, even I remember back in the day when the puck would go over the line and the ref would be like, no, I was in the process of getting the whistle to my mouth. So I know the puck went in a little bit before the whistle, but it should have been blown right when I lost vision of it or whatever the case is. And that one gets called back yet. Not this one. So maybe you can enlighten me because I don't have a clue what's going on anymore.
Yeah, they called it continuation on the play. All I could think about was the NBA when they call a foul like 16 seconds after the fact, and they count the basket, and that's continuation to me. And now we saw it in the NHL, like the Hannafin goal, like just the fact that it was way after the whistle, they still counted it. And like you, like I've been covering this league for 12 years. Hell, you played in this league, and I still don't know some of the rules. Like I was watching, I think, a Ducks game a couple weeks back. Did you know a goalie can't throw the puck? Like, I think that's what John Gibson was called for a couple weeks ago in overtime. He tried to throw the puck up to a teammate with his glove, and he got flagged for it. I didn't even know that was a fucking rule.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that was a rule. What about when you catch the puck and just dump it to him? Does it have to be kind of one of those just open your glove and let it drop, and you can't have a swinging motion with the hand or something like these things? I don't know. I feel bad for refs because they're kind of obviously supposed to get everything right, but there's stuff I don't even know about. And like you said, we've been around this game a long time. It's weird this stuff keeps coming up. But nonetheless, that's why at the end of the game, when they were bitching about, the power plays and stuff, I was literally like, you got a freebie goal, like a freebie. So maybe just chill out on the rest of it.
Oh, don't worry. We'll get to Darryl Sutter in a couple moments from now. But for now, we're going to get over the boards. All right, so feeling great in Leafs land. It's so great doing these shows every day because this team just does not lose in regulation. A 14-game point streak, 11-0-3. Again, they haven't lost in regulation in now over a month. November 11th is the last time that Casey DeSmith game, the Hall of Fame game against Pittsburgh. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with Marner or do you want to start with Willie Nylander? Have yourself a 5-point night, Billy.
Take your pick. Like I said in one of the 3 hits, man, it just doesn't matter who's going because there's layers behind whoever you're talking about that can pick up the slack or catch fire. If it's not Matthews, if it's not Marner, then it's Nylander, then it's Tavares. They got layers on this thing. And if that's not happened, they're getting chip in with secondary scoring, man. So I don't know, dude. Like, I'm sorry, but this team just looks really deep. And again, that was probably the tightest game we have seen in a little while, where they get down, they get behind, they get 2 goals scored on them in a row. They get a bad break with one of the calls, not the penalty calls. They had lots of, I guess you call it breaks or undisciplined play in their favor from the Flames, and they got some power plays, but it was kind of a nail biter, and it was a good hockey game. And again, like when they need it, they show up. Nylander with 5 points. Like, who gets 5 points in a tight game like that, where it's one that, lots is on the line, and for a regular season game, you could drop one and be pretty upset. And he just shows up and says, "Nah, I'll take control of this game now." It's impressive, man. And there's, you just throw a dart at the wall and take your pick on what it lands on to talk about with this team, man. But yeah, it's awesome, man. They're fucking kicking ass right now. And it's, what impresses you the most? Take your pick.
So firstly, I know I got some heat on social media for wondering what that contract extension, that negotiation will look like for Nylander in the offseason. Because again, rightfully so, all the conversation is about Austin Matthews, but do not forget, Willie Nylander will also be 1 year away from UFA status. And if this continues, and this being a 45-goal pace, that's going to be a really, really difficult negotiation. But to answer your question, the thing that impressed me the most about that game is that they still found a way, despite Matt Murray not having his A game. I think he'd be the first to admit he was not good. He was coming off a shutout. And I think, honestly, Rosie, the Leafs returned the favor. So he was the big reason, I should say, the win in Dallas. And they returned the favor because, in recent years, it would be demoralizing when a goalie lets a couple of stinkers in the way Murray did on Saturday. But they picked themselves up, they kept going, and they responded time after time. I was really, really impressed. I won't lie.
Yeah, it's good to hear from you, being a strong critic, and you've seen, the ups and downs, and you have yet to get too excited about this team. But to my point, when something's not going right, there's just something behind it to catch it, whether it's the defense standing up big time or the forwards, really chipping in the D zone and carrying, the team through some tough injuries or whatever, or it's been one of the goalies, saving the game for him or stealing one or being a big part of it. And like you said, this game, Murray, it wasn't his best. I don't think with Murray or Samsonov, I have said before, they have not shown a big weakness. They haven't had a stinker game, and I'm not even calling it a stinker game, but a couple he wanted back there, Murray, and there's the team to pick him up and get it done for him. And they're yin and yanging for each other, man. And that's what good teams do. That's what you need to do throughout a season. And it has been impressive, man. And yeah, Murray wasn't on his best, but he has been solid all year. And I think that, you need that with a hockey team that's going to go deep. You need to be able, not every guy, not every goalie, not every line, not every power play, not every group of decor is going to have their best stuff every single night. And when you don't, if you have enough behind you to carry you and pick up the slack and still get points and get a win, that's what those deep teams are that just can't, seem to do anything but win. And that's where the Maple Leafs are finding themselves right now. And it just continues to be proven. It's not a flash in the pan thing. I mean, we're on a 14-game point streak. That doesn't happen all the time.
And that's the crazy thing, too, is that they're 18-5-6. And I don't even think the offense has found its way just yet, right? Like, that hasn't been the story to me in this early season. It's been more so defense, and specifically what they did in the month of October. And if you really start to get cooking offensively, the sky is the limit for where this team can go, certainly here in the regular season, maybe even contend to compete for a President's Trophy. Although Boston doesn't lose very often, they beat the Vegas Golden Knights last night, but Toronto did gain a couple points, certainly with that loss to Arizona, that Wagon Coyote squad on Friday. So what do you think of this new OT strategy? So they elected to start Kampf, Sandin, and Liljegren, and they drew a penalty 3 seconds into OT, Rosie. How about that?
I almost wish they didn't, because I wanted to see how they were out there. I mean, yeah. I think it's kind of a direct, we are doing something different. Like, it seems like, Keefe must be as frustrated as we are watching overtime going, how in the hell is our record in overtime this bad with these types of players? And what do I mean by these types of players? I mean, they're the most offensive gifted guys in the NHL, and they've got a handful of them on that roster. And Keefe says, no more, man. You guys have been going too offense, and we're getting, we'll win the draw and we'll get first possession. It's kind of like a coin flip in the NFL. Like, who gets first possession is pretty huge. You're going to get a crack at it, and with 3 guys on the ice and all that room with a bunch of firepower, you're thinking score on this possession, and the Leafs have been caught too many times with possession. You go down, and if you don't score on your first thing, you're like, uh-oh, we forgot about the other end, and down they go on a 3-on-1. I guess Keefe has seen enough, and I wanted to see, those two D-man and Kampfer, my boy, that he's probably the most solid defensive guy. I wanted to see, hey, let's see what these guys can do. I felt good about it, seeing them on the faceoff dot going, okay, well, at least we're not going to get scored on here in the first shift.
Yeah, but the strategy was so intriguing because let's say Calgary gets possession, they score, then obviously the critics are going to be there. And like, how do you not have Matthews? How do you not have Nylander, the red hot Mitch Marner, Tavares on the ice? Like, it really is a fascinating conversation. I know it worked out. I can't remember the last time somebody took a penalty that quick off a face-off to start overtime. Like, Huberdeau goes to the box instantaneously. Like, he didn't even take the draw, it seemed like. And I think it worked out in favor, but I'm very, very curious on top of that, what they do next time around. Like, do you go back to the well, even though we saw it for 3 seconds here, Rosie? You sort of have to, right?
Well, see, depends what's going on out there. Maybe
Yeah.
he kind of rattled the cage enough by having those guys sit on the bench and being like, wow, he's serious. He's seen enough of our overtime bullshit. Like, I mean, if they did score on them, that's the thing. I don't think they would score on them because those guys were going to be shutting it down and keeping everything to the outside. And, maybe that first shift gets down, they get off the ice, and then you get those big boys out there. But, I mean, all you do know is when you do put those big boys out in this whole year, they get scored on. So why not change it up? If they did, they'd be like, well, I guess we're just bad at overtime. But you had to change something, man. They have been abysmal in overtime, and I think it was just kind of more of a change it up, rattle the cage a little bit. Hey, you guys aren't going to be out there because you haven't proven yourselves in overtime, and kind of a reality check for those big boys. Yeah, they're rolling. Yeah, everyone's on their streak, but you, in this specific situation, 3-on-3, those guys have not been getting it done this year. So you miss your time on there to start at least. So I didn't mind it at all. Why go back to beating your head against the wall, putting the same thing out there again and losing another one? And then it's like, well, are you going to do anything different or just give these guys free reign on the power play?
So you're saying it's a game-by-game feel then, right?
I think so. I don't know what he's going to do next. Will he go that hardcore with 2 D-men and Kampfer? I kind of feel like he'll do like I don't know, maybe he'll put Nylander out there with those D-men, maybe mix it up a little bit more. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I'm excited for the next overtime, though.
Defying logic, that is for sure, which brings us to the main plate of today's show. Darryl Sutter's comments, your boy. So Toronto went 3 for 6 on the power play on Saturday. Let's hear what Sutter had to say post-game, first and foremost.
Well, that's one thing I learned a long time ago, Eric. When you're in Chicago all those years, when you play and you come into Toronto, you know what goes on. I won't say nothing more.
So, Rosie, let me ask you this. Was he talking about King Street West, what goes on after the game with the boys?
Yeah, he was talking about all the mayhem down on downtown after the game that he's not allowed to be involved in anymore. No, I'm surprised, man. He must, like, to me, that is him being uber bloody frustrated. Like, that's him being really frustrated for a guy that stays really even keel and doesn't usually, do anything but call the most obvious things and blame his own players. And it is what it is. And hey, we got to be better. He pretty much just said that the league is biased towards the Toronto Maple Leafs, where, people who are in love with the Leafs and follow them, they've got plenty to bitch about getting screwed over or bad calls or bad breaks or bad this or bad that. But I don't know. I'm just surprised that a guy of his caliber is going to do that and cause that many waves. Like, let's be honest here. You're high sticking guys in the face and stuff. I mean, it wasn't like there were these weak ass little hooking penalties that didn't do anything. I mean, those happen in every game for every team, and to call out the league for being biased towards the Leafs I just don't buy it, man. I think they broke it down on the podcast, and every panel to a guy was like, yeah, I don't know about that take, man. Like, those are pretty obvious penalties to me. So I was surprised to hear it. What do you think about him? That was a big statement to me.
Yeah, it's always the same shit. Every time somebody rolls through Toronto, they don't get their way. Maybe your goaltending needs to be better, right? Like, that was a big story for me, is like Dan Vidar was not good enough to win that game, and Toronto's just too powerful offensively. Yeah, I'm always careful to take anything Darryl Sutter says with a grain of salt, because it's always calculated, being in that area in Alberta, that like, this guy's calculated. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's won before he knows what he's doing. And I do think maybe it was the art of deflection where everybody's talking about the penalties and all that, instead of Calgary losing another game and really, really struggling to find their identity so far in this season. Because you look at the numbers, he just comes out there with no statistical output to back it up. The Leafs ranked 28th in power play opportunities since 16-17. Now, granted, you look at the numbers this year, I believe they're in the top 12, top 11 in terms of power plays. And it'll help when you get 6 on Saturday. But, like, I don't watch the games to suggest that the Leafs are always on the power play. Like, honestly, it feels like the opposite. And, again, the numbers will back that up, where they don't seem to get the benefit of the doubt on a nightly basis. But I think this is more calculated than that. I think you're so bang on. It was frustration on Sutter's part, no?
Yeah, I mean, we'll look at the night before. They took, 6, 7 penalties in Columbus the night before. So what happened there? And if you want to crunch the numbers, is Toronto number 1, 2, 3 in power plays every single year in and out?
Yeah.
Well, then you got a reason to put your hand up and say, hey, it seems like this team's getting some calls. It's not even close to that. So it's just totally unbiased comments. And man, if he's going that deep with, I'm gonna go pull this out in the media and deflect the attention away from our team. Holy shit, he's doing some big puppet master in there. I think he was just frustrated and said same old bullshit. Like, he's just pissed off. Like, going into Toronto and we get a bunch of, we're killing penalties all night. Well, you were the night before in Columbus. And I mean, when you're a really good team like the Toronto Maple Leafs are and you're flying and you're winning everything, you're going to get some power plays because the guys are going to be stretching, the line on what's allowed and what's not, trying to stop these big boys from filling their net. And when you do that, you're going to get your stick on a guy. You're going to get it up when a guy beats you. You're going to be reaching a little bit. You're going to trip a guy up and you're going to take a few penalties. And the Flames are obviously being a little bit undisciplined right now. I just surprised he said it. Maybe he's doing the old mind games, trying to, it just doesn't seem like Sutter to protect his team from getting frickin'. He would be the one to say, yeah, let's light our team up. We're not good enough right now. He's usually that cut and dry.
So let me ask you this. Do players care what coaches say in the media, whether it's officiating or whether they jump on a guy like very Tortorella? Like, do players care that much about that stuff?
Not really, because you don't really hear it except if you're on your own. Like, after that game, you're in the dressing room, you're getting your work done on your body, you're getting your recovery stuff in, your cold tub, and you're doing your thing. The trainers are running around like crazy. They got to get to the plane. The food's coming, the this and the that. You're all doing your stuff. And, the coach pops out, does his media thing. You get on the plane, you're gone. And then the next day at practice or skate or whatever, you might hear like, oh yeah, Sutter said this or whatever. And then he'll come and address the team. And it's kind of like what happens outside of the room is like maybe grain of salt stuff, or you heard he said it, or if he calls one guy out specifically, they might kind of have a quick meeting on the side. But it's not really like the whole team isn't like, oh man, Sutter said this, because Sutter says a hell of a lot more than that. That's a one soundbite clip that the media is going to take and the fans are going to have on replay. What the team is actually hearing from Sutter's mouth is tenfold that, and they're focused on all kinds of other things. So not really, but if it's something big like that, the players might hear it. If it's specific to the team or a player, yeah. But other than that, it's not on the waves like it is on the outside of that locker room.
Were you a guy who paid attention to anything coming out of the media? Like, I think it's fair to proclaim that some guys do pay attention, some others don't, right?
Yeah, and some guys just follow the league. Like, I didn't have Twitter or anything when I played. I didn't have much to worry about. I was just worried about myself. My hands were pretty full there. So not watching a lot, but I'd watch the highlights. I'd watch SportsCenter. I'd watch, Leafs TV, what's going on with these people just for fun. And some guys probably wouldn't, especially if they're, the superstars of the team, or if they're in a slump, or if they're not doing good enough. You probably stay away. It's just extra negativity you don't need. But I think it's up in the air as far as who likes to follow. Some guys just follow absolutely every team in the NHL and are focused on every little detail going on. They just follow it like crazy. Other guys stay away. I think it's personal choice. But if you're struggling and you're a star and there's pressure on you, I don't think you're watching a whole lot of media at the time.
I think it's unavoidable in 2022, honestly. And that's just me not really knowing much about the topic, but the fact that it's 2022, there's so much accessibility with Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. Like, you're bound to see something. You're bound to see a quote. You're bound to see a clip. But that's just the way I see it. I know it was maybe a much simpler times when you played in the NHL. I've just always been so curious about that. But without further ado, the wrap-up is brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. I'm feeling pretty decent about today's play, Rosie. I'm going to take the over 6.5, the Wild hosting the Edmonton Oilers. I got a couple statistics to back this up for you. The first being back on Friday, Edmonton beat Minnesota 5-2 in Edmonton, so the over hit in that game. Then furthermore, back on December 1st, Minnesota won 5-3 in Minnesota. So yes, again, the over hit in that game. And then on top of that, it has been a strategy for me all season long to attack the over in Wild home games. It's hit in 10 of 14 games and 4 in a row. So that's 71%. Naturally, the under will hit tonight, right?
Well, you've done your homework, so you can't blame me on that by any stretch. And when you got Konza and McJesus out there, I mean, anything is possible. That guy could have a 5-point night anytime he decides to turn it on. So I don't mind it, man. You have been good. You have been on fire. You've been hitting the Mitch Marner streaks. You've been hitting lots of things. So I like a good overplay. And let's, guys are thinking about Christmas. Maybe they get a small break coming up here. Maybe, some guys are sleeping and some nets get filled tonight. So points bet Canada. I like it. Over. Let's go.
I love the promo there. Holy shit, I've been on fire. I won't lie. And let's remember this when I'm really, really ice cold. But on the weekend, I had a John Tavares anytime assist, and I had Nazem Kadri over half a point that hit on that snipe. So feeling good about my betting right now. Hopefully we start off hot this week. And again, I like the over 6.5, Minnesota and the Edmonton Oilers. So we get set for another busy week here for the Maple Leafs. They're tomorrow night, Tuesday night, they're home to the Anaheim Ducks, where on paper it looks like a favorable opponent, but they better be ready to play this one.
Yeah, another one of those revenge games from that road trip that no one can stop talking about from back in October. I love that. Like, it's just like, but October. But it's like they had a bad week.
That's me. Yeah,
it's everybody, man. That's all they're talking about. But they had a bad week. They had a bad week back in October, and no one can let it go. Pretty typical. But it's looking like a lot different team here right now. And I like it because instead of going in and having those sleeper games, I love what happened in October. They're not going to take these guys lightly. They didn't take the Kings lightly, and they're facing these teams again. And it's like, hey, we have lost to these guys. Everyone in this room has lost to these guys. So we better figure it out. And it kind of keeps you on board where, I mean, honestly, the biggest problem right now for the Leafs is probably complacency and keeping, the hammer down and not letting up and not dropping this thing. And it's hard because it's a balancing act when you're up there and you haven't lost in a long time. You just think that things are going to happen easy and you can drop a bit of a stinker, but they've already done that and they know what that feels like. And they can be reminded of that Ducks game from a little while back. So I don't know, man. I hope they got their heads screwed on straight, and it looks like they do. Every time they have an opportunity to kind of drop one, they're there to get it done. So, I mean, we'll see if we can do it again.
I would pipe that game in from October 30th into the dressing room so they can't miss it. They were up 3-1 in that game. Yes, we all remember that. And then they lost in overtime. And it is a back-to-back as well for the Anaheim Ducks. I know we love the fatigue conversation. They're going to be in Ottawa, then they're coming to Toronto, but it is a back-to-back, so you'll have the fresher legs. You'll probably see Anthony Stolarz, but it should be very, very intriguing. By the way, Flynn McCoy writes in, I love the new OT strategy for the Leafs. The offense is so good in the Leafs, they should basically never lose in OT. Outside of maybe the Oilers, I don't know if there's a team with a better offense for 3-on-3, but that's a good point to bring up because they don't seem to be very, very successful. We've gone over the numbers ad nauseum here on the show the last little while is their deficiencies 3-on-3. It doesn't make much sense, does it?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there's a bit of bad luck involved too. You get those guys out there, they've had possession, they've had their chances. And I mean, give them a couple of more, double that up and go into like the teens as far as cracks at it. And, you're going to score that first opportunity every once in a while. But I mean, it seems like they have a chance to score, and that's just the nature of 3-on-3. Then if you don't, I mean, you're going to be caught down by that goal line since you're about to, have a scoring chance. And as soon as that pops out, everyone's jets go on and they're going the other way. And if you're caught behind, it's an odd man rush. And they've just got caught with their pants down a few too many times. And I don't know, I kind of think you got to be a little bit unlucky not to score on that original possession, which they haven't really done. And I don't know, 6 times they've already lost in overtime, or 5 at least. So I mean, it is what it is. It's not like those guys are never going to be out there in overtime again. You just had to mix it up, man. You got to do that when things aren't going well, and that was a good time to do it.
Hey,
I wish we saw more of it.
And they did their job. Yeah, no, they drew a penalty and they did their job, right? They score the power play goals after, and you have to credit those three guys for being on the ice, drawing the penalty, and then the big boys clean it up, and the Leafs win again. So we get set for tomorrow night. Excellent job, Rosie. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?
Sounds good. We'll see you then.
All right, there you have it. That's Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Once again, the Leafs getting set to host the Anaheim Ducks on Tuesday, and that's when we'll talk next. Take care.